Today's episode's brought to you by A New Path to Pro.
Drop the beat.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to High Noon Podcast, the competitive Overwatch podcast. I am your host, The Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much. I accidentally got things sticking in my hand when I pick them up off my desk. I need to clean up.
Might need to clean. But yeah, so welcome back, everyone. For everyone in the U.S., happy belated Thanksgiving. Hope you had a good holiday. For everyone else, sucks to suck, I guess. Canada, you get your Thanksgiving at a different time, and everyone else, I don't know what to tell you.
Don't do that.
Thanksgiving is great. Thanksgiving is great, but we've actually got quite an episode today. We got quite a bit of stuff to talk about. We got some news today, as well as some other stuff. So let's jump right into it. But first, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. We've got some new patron hype. New patron Fiction Man at the $1 level. Thank you so much for pledging there. If you do have a special message that you want, send it to us. I checked Patreon, but Patreon messages sometimes mess up. Send it to us over on Discord or Twitter or whatever, and we can get that to you there. If you would like to support the show via Patreon, you can go over to patreon.com/highnoonpodcast. Or you can head over to twitch.tv/highnoonpodcast and become a subscriber, even if you have Twitch Prime, because we are an affiliate. So you can use your Twitch Prime over here. And many of you already have, and we thank you very much for that. But moving right along, just a little bit of an update for those of you who have been keeping up with the podcast on Twitter and on Discord and all that stuff. We do have a giveaway currently going on right now. It's our 2-year anniversary / Overwatch League starting season 1 giveaway extravaganza. We're giving away an Overwatch League jersey of your choice for the winner, as well as one of these nifty Overwatch World Cup BlizzCon pins. I don't know if you can still get them online or not on the website, but if you can, great. But if you can't, maybe they're rare. I don't know. But we're giving those away. The link to that is our pinned tweet on Twitter, twitter.com/highnoonpodcast. There's about 1,000 ways to enter. One of which is to join our Discord, which we now have our own custom suite link.
Yeah, I just tried to check on it, and I think it said it was like expired. So I don't know. We'll get it squared away, but we should definitely have one.
It's yeah. Well, it probably works at some point, maybe.
I know it did when we first got it. But it was big shout outs to Big Fish over at Game Watch today on Instagram. He set it up for us and got it so that way we could just have the nice fancy little.
Mine says it works, so I'm assuming it works. It's discord.me/highnoonpodcast. So you don't need to go through that garbled mess to head over to the Discord. You can just go to discord.me/highnoonpodcast. The link is also on the Twitter and over at highnoonpodcast.com. But enough about all that junk. Not junk. It's great. But enough of the housekeeping stuff. Let's talk about what we did last week. Death, anything fun and exciting over the Thanksgiving break for you?
Well, a lot of football stuff, a lot of family stuff. That was really kind of the bulk of it, was just kind of hanging out with and seeing my family. So many nieces and nephews and things like that. Kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit just with all the crazy stuff going on. So it's kind of nice when things slow down a little bit for the holiday. And I had today off to prepare the episode today. So nice. Yeah, we're gonna be taking a look at the positional battles that are happening on each and every one of the Overwatch League rosters where they exist. We're not making them up if they don't exist. But yeah, so we're gonna take an in-depth look at some of the questions we have about these rosters and some of the questions the teams themselves probably have and are in the process of answering for themselves now. So excited.
Yeah, we got a nice little piece of content for you on another tournament light week. But that's going to change very soon because next week preseason starts.
9 days.
Wednesday of next week. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wednesday.
it's Monday now.
Yeah, it's Monday now. So by the time you hear this, if you're hearing this on the day it's released, a week from today is when we are going to get some preseason action, which is also when you can get your Overwatch League jerseys and merch for the first time. So I'm just saying, my Christmas list is open. But what I did last week, I also did Thanksgiving stuff. This was the first time I have gone to Thanksgiving and met my girlfriend's entire family. So that was fun. And I'm not saying that facetiously. I actually did have a lot of fun. And we ended up going to New York City. We saw a show that had George Costanza in it, literal like Jason Alexander. It was really great. And I pretty much did not stop eating from Wednesday night until Sunday night. So it was great. What's that?
NA holidays.
Yeah, NA holidays are the best. Oh, and I did post a picture in the Discord. I was watching football. So I did you proud, Death. I did you proud. I watched some football.
Your one game of the year.
Yeah. No, I watched the Super Bowl too. I watched the Super Bowl too. I actually knew the most about football at the last Super Bowl party I was at. So imagine the gang of rapscallions that were there. One other thing, we did talk about it last week. We both Death and I were on the esports narrative podcast. That episode is now out. So go over to the esports narrative podcast. I think you can probably find it on iTunes or any other place you get your podcasts, and we're on the latest episode, so check that out. Had a lot of fun doing it. Talked a lot about Overwatch League and how we got into podcasting and all that good stuff. So huge shout outs to Esports Narrative Podcast for having us on. I had a blast, and Death, I think you did too. And yeah, always like guesting on other shows and whatnot. And I think that's it for housekeeping. Oh, the one last thing I wanted to say, we heard your request last week. We kind of fixed the sound issues about me sounding awful and sounding different than Deathblow. We fixed that. We both now have the same mic. I think I mentioned that before. But he said the volume was a little bit low. I turned it up, and so it should be better. If it's not, I would suggest turning your own volume up just a touch. It should be better. But it's definitely better than it was before. That much I can guarantee. But let's move on to the best segment of the week.
Overwatch Today, Meme of the Week.
Of course, that is the meme of the week. And this week, this one was just dumb. So, of course, I picked it. Someone made a Grand Theft Auto character, and it looks like Jeff Kaplan, and he's just covered in blood. And I think the caption was something like Jeff Kaplan after they nerfed Diva or something. He's got like bunny ears, and he's covered in blood, and it looks it looks a lot like Jeff Kaplan. He's wearing a pink shirt, and he's got like cuts and bruises and blood on him. It's pretty great.
Poor Papa Jeff.
Poor Papa Jeff.
Seen better days.
Yeah, has seen better days and has nerfed better divas. But let's move right along. Got a lot to talk about in this section.
It's tournament talk.
Of course, Nate Nanzer, good guy Nate Nanzer knows that we record on Monday, so you got to get that new info out early Monday so we can get it in for the show. Death, do you want to talk about the path to pro?
Sure. So they basically laid out the blueprint here for how the tier 2 and tier 3 system will be working, the feeder leagues that will, provide the ability to showcase your talent to make it into Overwatch League. As expected, that's going to basically begin at the tier 2 level with the Overwatch Contenders series. They're going to formalize everything and standardize everything across all the regions. So we're going to no longer see the Overwatch Apex series, the Overwatch Premier series, the APAC, all that stuff is just going to become Contenders, Korea, Contenders Australia, and Contenders South America. I mentioned the last two there because they're adding two new ones. Australia and South America will now get their own Contenders brackets and regions that they'll be able to compete in. So a broader array of talent will be able to be spotlighted and highlighted. And also they did announce that they're going to be doing essentially the same thing for the Open Division. It's going to be happening in the same regions. So they're just going to have a subset where, you know, kind of the tertiary teams, the up-and-comers, you have to join in and battle it out. That is going to be run similarly to, I don't know, Icaria must be pleased, but there's going to be promotion and relegation within there. And I think that's actually a really good thing in this sense, because this is where it's very, very important to ensure that the best talent is what's being highlighted here. It's a flawed system if you just have teams that can't compete and are just like regularly and repeating as the bottom end. You know, they should be dropped out. We should bring in new people. We need to have the best float to the top here and be easily recognizable. And so it looks to me like a very solid system for doing this. I do love that they're opening up the two new divisions. I know they also said they're not going to be region locked, right? So if you have an NA team and you think you can compete in the, you know, and highlight your talent better in a different region, you can play in the other region, but your match is going to be played on that server. So you're going to have to fight the ping. I thought that was really interesting as well. And there's also going to be like Contenders trials, I think, as well here. It's all new, and I had to create the rest of the episode and develop that content as well. So I did gloss over this a little bit.
Yeah, I know. I think I understand what the Contenders trials is.
Well, help me understand. Sure.
So what they're doing is it's basically they're bridging the divide between the Open Division and the Contenders. So it's like, what happens when you win Open Division? It's like, okay, maybe it's a little bit more of a formal process than, okay, we win Open Division and we're really good. Let's hope that a Contenders team a Contenders team buys our roster or something. This is a way for you as an Open Division team to actually get a chance to play into Contenders. So I believe so. This is from the article. In addition to teams who dominate the Open Division, teams who dominate in the Open Division will now have a chance to progress even further. At the close of each contender season, the top 4 Open Division teams from each region will be invited to compete in that region's Contenders Trials, which is an 8-team promotion / relegation tournament for Overwatch contenders. So the top 4 of the Open Division and assuming the bottom 4 of that Contender series are going to play in an 8-team tournament, and the top 4 of that tournament make it back into Contenders or make it into Contenders from Open Division, and the bottom 4 are done out of Contenders. So it's a way to keep the talent pool circulating. It's not going to get stagnant with the same 8 teams and Contenders over and over again, and just hope that some weird like business deal happens to get an Open Division team in. There's going to be some actual formalized, like, okay, kid, okay, Crusher 99, you can, if you're good enough, man, you're making it to Contenders. You can do it. You can play your way in. It doesn't matter if you're funded. It doesn't matter. You don't need to go through all these legal and business loopholes. You can just play your butt off and make it up into Contenders. So I think it's really cool. I mean, the whole thing with Overwatch League has been like, okay, we're not doing the promotion relegation thing like League used to do. We're going to have set teams that buy a spot and they're there forever. That's great. But we're having that a little bit for Contenders, which I think is great, because Contenders is more of a training ground, a chance to spotlight. It's not supposed to be a place. It's like minor league baseball. The goal is not to stay in Contenders forever. You want to move up to Overwatch League and make it there. And if you're in Contenders for forever, but you start to fall off, you're gonna get relegated out. So I think it just keeps the talent pool from stagnating like in a natural way.
Yeah, definitely agree. You know, I generally not a big fan of the promotion and relegation, but in a system like this where it's not about like, you know, as a fan, I'm not going to be picking a Contenders team, right? Like that I'm going to stick with forever.
Right.
And as an owner, I'm not spending $20 million to field, to even have the right to sign people to contracts for even more money, So there's less to protect here from an investment standpoint, not to trivialize the investment that teams and organizations will put out for their contenders teams. But again, at the end of the day, either system can work. I think everything has to be upfront and open. And I think this is, a really good way to kind of ensure that the Overwatch League, whether those teams or any teams in particular decide to make a poor decision and stick by people that aren't competing at the highest level or what have you, it's a good way to make sure that at least the scouts are made aware of the other options. And as somebody that, I might be too old to actually be a pro player, but I would still love to be, and it would be awesome. And I'm still very interested in the process and things like that. Like it's great to see everything just kind of get fleshed out. So really excited by this news across the board, and can't wait to see it all play out. I think the next year between now and next Thanksgiving is just going to be an absolutely insane time for everybody that even casually enjoys watching Overwatch. It should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, this kind of naturally solves one of the issue, probably the only real issue we had with Contenders Season 1, which, just in case you're a new listener, we absolutely loved Contenders Season 1. It was a great tournament. The hype was there. Everything went right with it. The one thing that we kind of criticized near the end was like these teams that were mathematically are essentially out of playoff contention. We're just like, ugh, what's the point? And just kind of gave up not necessarily through games, but their focus was on other things. This was at a time when Overwatch League tryouts are still going on. There's a lot up in the air. Now it's like, you need to play your best till the end, or else you might lose. You might be out of the league. Yeah. So there's incentive to play it out until the very end, because you can get relegated. And it's always, it'll be interesting to see, like, even if like teams at the end are like, okay, we're done, great, you're gonna now be giving that spot to someone who potentially won or was in the top 4 of the Open Division. That really, like, the Open Division, those are the scrappers, those are the the high school kid. Well, they're not actually high school kids, but in essence they're that bright young future, like, we want to get into the Overwatch League, we're going to scrap and get it, and in a way take it from people who maybe have taken it for granted, or not necessarily, but you get what I'm saying. Like, they're coming from the bottom and working their way up and can grab that spot from a team that maybe would have crumbled or just given up before. So it'll be interesting. One of the tweets that came out of this whole announcement was from Monte Cristo, who's obviously, as many of you know, very critical about everything, essentially. But he brought up a really good point about Contenders. The crucial factor for the launch of Contenders is the knowledge that previous teams will be invited into the 2018 season. This will assure owners their investments will be protected. I'm
not really sure what he means by this, to be perfectly honest with you. Reading it, like, it reads to me like maybe he's not aware that they're going to be relegated out. Like, you know what I mean? That could
there's only going to be, so there's going to be 4 teams. The bottom 4 teams have the potential to be relegated out. Mm-hmm. That's not even a necessary thing. Like, you can tank Contenders and still crush the Open Division teams. Like, if you're making an investment and you have a solid team, your investment is protected. Like, your investment, I don't know, I guess maybe it's with the assumption that you're making a somewhat smart investment. If you're investing in a good team, your investment's protected. Whereas I don't know, I think it's more,
it's like, a little awkward, but I think the point is here that as long as you deserve it, right? Like, to me as a fan and as somebody that wants to see the league itself succeed, the most important and the most crucial factor is that the best teams are in Contenders. Because if the best teams and the best players aren't in Contenders, then why have it and why do it? And does
where
look
are
like
they
the
then?
System, right? And then where, that just makes everybody's job harder, from the scouts down across the board. So to me, as long as that's the case and that's the truth, I don't think it's important for Overwatch League, right? Like, it's not super important to the NFL. The NFL does just fine. And sorry, Thorne, but your Cleveland Browns are just terrible. Like, they just, and the league moves on. And it's not necessarily the most important thing at the highest level. But at the end of the day, it does become very, very important. At some capacity, it has to matter, right? There is a system in place that elevates the best talent, and that looks like what we have.
Right. And I think it's more of like if you are a big brand or a non-endemic brand to esports that wants to get into Overwatch but doesn't want to make the investment of Overwatch League, Contenders might actually be something that makes sense because your investment is safer than if you were just, fielding a team for Go Suit Gamers weeklies, right? Because right. If you do well, you're going to get invited to the next thing, and you have a place to go. There's a path. It's not necessarily just for the players. It's for brands that maybe want to make an investment but don't want to make a $20 million investment or can't make a $20 million investment. It's a safer place to go than just the wild, wild west. So I don't know. I think it does bring some stability. I could see, when you think about like these brands that have so much money, right? Any sports organization in the US could easily, maybe not easily, but could definitely field an Overwatch League team, right? But they're not looking to make a bunch of money and be the next thing. They want a steady stream of income, right? They are a company that's that big wants to be conservative with its money. So it wants something that's steady, and this might be a little bit steadier than spiking, be like, oh, let's just start an esports organization and compete in random tournaments. I don't know. I think it's good for everyone, except for maybe like the people who were running the tournaments before, which a lot of people have argued. But we were talking about this before, Death. Like, minor league baseball is not run by some third party organization. As far as I know, they might not be run by Major League Baseball. It might be some like subsidiary of Major League Baseball, but it's not like, Mike's Hard Lemonade is sponsoring the minor league baseball system as a whole. Right. It's going through Major League Baseball. It really almost fundamentally can't be a third party running everything and being in control of everything, because at the end of the day, Blizzard gets to dictate what it wants because they own the game. And the format and all these things need to mirror what the highest level of competition will be. Otherwise, it does a huge disservice to the league itself and to the players in the subdivision that's trying to do things differently. This needs to be all run by Blizzard. They need to set the rules and set the standard for what things will be, and make sure that is consistent with how things work in Overwatch League, so that everything is an accurate assessment and is a good example and a clean parallel, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like, it has to be a good comparison in order for it to make any sense. Right. You don't want it's just awkward for everyone if there's even slight differences in how they work. I mean, it's even a little bit awkward between like college and pro in a lot of sports, because like the rules are slightly different. Like,
I actually hate it. I refuse to watch college football. I don't care about it in the slightest, and it's completely based on like the complete differences in the structure and how it's just a nightmare to me. And I like, as a result, I just find the college product to be confusing, terribly run, and stupid, and I refuse to watch it. And that's not what we want to see happen with Overwatch League.
Right. The only reason I like college basketball at all is because the kids actually try, because they really want to win, unlike the NBA, where like if they break their ankle, it's just not worth winning a game. College kids will break their ankle over one game,
right?
At least in the tournament. So, but let's move. Actually, we can. I mean, it doesn't really matter what section we do it, but let's move on to the. Oh, this is what we want to talk about. We've got a tournament that is coming up. It is the Nexus Cup 2017. The finals are going to take place from November 30th to December 17th. So coming right up, we've got basically every remaining good team in the Asia region. So for the Chinese teams, we've got Lucky Future, LGD Gaming, Lingtang Esports, Lao Yinbi, Miraculous Team 1, Miraculous Youngster, VC Gaming, and Team CC. A lot of those teams we've definitely heard about. Miraculous Youngster being the biggest.
Some of them you made up on the spot right now, because those were not the words that were written down.
I mean, I may have had a mild stroke while trying to read
it's a
those
tough
things.
time with the Chinese.
It's a
keyboard. But the word miracle is the word miracle, no matter it's not written in another language.
What did I
there.
say?
You said miraculous twice. You said miraculous team 1 and then miraculous
Miracli T-am Oni. Oh, okay. I pronounced it correctly. I'm gonna get crap for that, aren't I? The South Korean teams. We've got Element Mystic, RX Foxes, Kangdu Panthera, Lunatic High, Meta Athena, Runaway 7, and X6 Gaming. I'm interested to know what Lunatic High's roster is right now, because they're an Overwatch League team, right? Like the former team.
I feel like they've announced their new roster though going forward. I honestly, my head's so full with Overwatch League stuff that I haven't really paid attention to how they're reforming now for their contenders runs. But this should be a first quick glance at what the new up and coming Lunatic High and Kongdu Panthera and what these rosters will be. Mm-hmm. Also, plenty of these teams are just missing 1 or 2 players. Only a couple of guys got signed on the Overwatch League. So we're going to get to see how their replacements fit in and get an idea for how things will go.
Full roster, right?
Right. Yeah, they should do pretty well.
They should maybe run away with this one. We're keeping it alive, folks.
You're stealing my joke. You're stealing my joke. I don't like it.
Hey, you didn't sign enough of their players to your fake Overwatch League Season 2 team, so I have inherited. I bought the joke.
But I also think I ran away with that exercise.
So. Boo. But yeah, I mean, just looking at the rosters, I mean, Kongdu Panthera I don't know if they're still the same roster that we've seen before, but they've always been a good one. Miraculous Youngster, did I say the right one? Miraculous Youngster has really made a splash recently. Runaway, obviously Apex finalist, 2-time Apex finalist, I believe. Meta Athena, another one. This is going to be a good event, and it's also going to be a big preview of most likely, I would imagine a lot of these players are going to be playing in Overwatch League Season 2, and at the very least, they're going to be at the top of contenders. So,
good primer event for the potential. I think this might be 2 different contenders regions kind of meeting head-to-head here. So
yeah, it's going to be a nice mix. It's going to be interesting. And we got A. Smith coming out with the Element Mystic is going to win. So, interesting. So definitely going to be one to check out. It's also going to be really the only tournament that's going on. So if you can make it, at least watch the VODs, I think.
The first half of it will be the only tournament going on. The second half should overlap with the preseason.
With preseason.
So I might lose that a little bit, but we'll see how it goes.
Wow. I mean, watch when it's the only thing, and then watch the VODs after the preseason games are over.
Absolutely.
Okay. But let's move on and...
let's break it down!
We will break it down. Got a couple of topics here. So this is one we're just gonna briefly talk about. We've started to see pro pugs get played, so pickup games being streamed for a number of reasons. I think a lot of the teams are finally in the U.S. and they're all, if not in the same facility, in the same general area. So the teams, I think, have made a concerted effort to start their streaming schedules, get the players playing, get people to know who these players are. The biggest one, maybe not the biggest streams by viewership, but I think the biggest new fame is coming from Excelsior. Obviously, they're
Play it.
Of course, I forget we have this. Excelsior! Yes, we've seen Sebayobi and some other Excelsior players streaming and playing pickups together. And it's kind of interesting, Death, how all of a sudden we have a lot of new Excelsior fans.
Yeah, like these guys have had tape forever. Like you guys didn't know these guys were like really, really good. Like there's a reason we have them universally in the top four. These guys are really, really good. But nonetheless, all of New York is here now in the United States. Mm-hmm. Bare Hands did get his entire squad together in the same, in the same room basically too. Now. So that's great to see. And yeah, if you didn't know, these guys are all really good. Like all these Korean rosters are just filled with individual talent like crazy. We'll have to see how it all plays out, which teams rise to the top. But I think New York is one that people should be excited about. So I'm glad to see it. You know, it's not the team I chose, but it's not a team I've chosen to hate either.
Yeah.
It's a team I'll mock on more than a random occasion every now and then just to get a rise out of you. But other than that, I mean, if it wasn't just for the sheer fact of getting to make fun of you a little bit, like they would probably be just, you know, locked in as my number 2 team. These guys are really, really good, and they're not even going to have Flower yet, so they're going to be crazy. It's a good time, I think, to jump onto the Excelsior bandwagon a little bit here and you know, go crazy with it, because these guys are going to make a splash, and it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And I just wanted, like Blevin said, we just wanted to make you guys aware, if you didn't know that they were doing these Pro Pug streams. I mean, they're teammates playing against each other, with each other. Like, it's mixing up like crazy. It's a whole lot of fun. The players are really enjoying it, and so far I think the viewers have as well. So if you haven't seen them yet, make sure you check them out.
Yeah, there's some like crazy combos that they were pulling off. Like there was, I forget who it was, but I think it must have been I think it was Arc. I think Arc was one of them, and it playing Lucio, and just like they timed this like combo where Arc goes behind the enemy's Reinhardt and boops him up so that their Reinhardt can earth shatter, and it was just like,
oh yeah,
so crazy. Like it I think people like okay, these guys are good. They were were they no, they were Luxury Watch. They're Luxury Watch Blue. It's like, okay, you know, I remember hearing about them and them doing well, but I don't really remember them. It's like now people are finally seeing them play, and they're like, oh wait, this is like a whole nother level of thing that I didn't even realize. Like, I thought Flower was a one-off. I thought Flower's skill and like power was a one-off, and they're like, oh no. Oh, we were wrong. Okay. It's like, now it's like, okay, now we're on the bandwagon. We weren't sure before, but now we're on. I mean, it's hard. You can't really call it a bandwagon, right? They haven't even played yet, but you know, I accept all of you New York Excelsior fans. Just come.
Yeah. And to be clear, there's been like some defensiveness about me calling like the Dallas Fuel fan base a bit of a bandwagon, and that one I might mean it a little derogatorily when I say that one, but it's not a negative term. It's just like when people are
kind of
it has a negative connotation, but
not
it's
here,
not
though.
in the word, right? Like people have put it there, and it's not guaranteed to be there. Like all that means is that people are moving in that direction, like that fans are coming in and starting to root for this team. And guess what? If that's the case, they're literally all bandwagons right now. Like there's no existing fan bases for any of these teams. So every single one of them has a bandwagon right now. So my apologies if you don't like that word, but we're just meaning it by like its definition of like the group of fans heading to root for that team.
Also not going to stop using the word either.
No, 100%, because there's times I want you to get that, you know, that upset feeling about it. I want to use it to poke fun at people like, you know, Fuel fans. But that's been the big thing for the Discord is you come in, and right when you join, there's an automated message that says you joined, and a bunch of people are spamming their emotes on your join to try to get you to join their team. So when you come in the channel, state who you're rooting for, or at the risk of being converted to another team. But so we got that. Let's talk about what we wanted to focus on. I mean, the spawn of this section was we wanted to see what did like sports shows do in the preseason, and one of the big things is, and Death, you can speak a little bit more to this for football, is like position battles. Who's going to be the starting running back? Who's going to be the starting quarterback? Who's going to be pitching? Isn't really, because everyone pitches on different nights, but you know, who's gonna get that starting spot, and especially with these teams where we've got, you know, 8 to 12 players mostly at a minimum, with the exception of Mayhem, of course. Who's going to get the starting spot and why? So we've got a couple of battles here that we wanted to talk about. So for just about every team, I think there's two
Mayhem doesn't
exceptions
have
here. Yeah, Mayhem doesn't have one with their just stock 6 roster.
Yeah.
And also, sorry, Fuel fans, but I really don't anticipate these roster spots being very up for grabs here, just judging on who they've signed and the success they've had. It would seem very silly for them to move away from that. I don't know that anybody they've added will make a huge splash. We've talked a lot about how they're going to use subs. Like, we're not going to never see these guys.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, I think the core 6 will remain intact. If anything changes, obviously, that would be one of the bigger surprises of the Overwatch League if there was more than just the occasional Seagull sighting, or if one of those guys get in for a couple maps, or we'll see people rotated out for rest days and things like that. But what we're talking about is the default, what you expect in the championship these guys would put out for the roster on that first map. So taking a look, we're going to go by division order here. So we're going to take a look at the Atlantic Division first. It houses both of our favorite teams. That therefore automatically means it's the superior division. So
by a country mile it is.
A long shot. Like, the just Pacific really Division is terrible. I don't even know why we talk about it, but we're going to anyways.
I thought they were playing Rocket League.
They should be like Lucio Ball or something like that. It's like a completely different game. Yeah. All right. Well, enough shots fired here. Let's get right along into the first team here. I had some dental work done last week. I didn't mention it because I'm trying to forget it. My apologies if I just stop talking randomly. I'm dealing with some pain. But yeah, so the Boston Uprising, to me, when I look at this, there's 2 roster spots here that really look to be, up for grabs a little bit. And the first one, I think, is off tank. So we have not E or Note, and I'm not 100% sure which one it's supposed to be.
I think it's Note.
But I do lean that direction as well. It's just the capitalization of it, right? Like, I'm pretty sure it's just like, it's the E at the end is capitalized, which always throws me and makes me want to pronounce it different. But we'll go with Note. We have him in the off-tank position, as well as Kalios. Looking at things, Kalios is a signing from South Korea, and obviously Note comes from the Toronto esports group. So I think that's kind of telling in its own right. Like, Africa Freaks is where excuse me one second, where Kalios comes from.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to be really interesting, but there's definitely some overlap here in the hero pools. This is one I really expect kind of just the scrim results, right, and the general feel of the team to kind of answer for itself. I don't have a strong feeling here, but definitely, some of these we're going to have a lot to say on. Other ones, it's just going to be like, can't wait to find it out, because we don't know.
It's going to be more about pointing out that there are these battles and to keep an eye out for them once preseason hits. And even, I think preseason is almost like a training ground, or a tryout in and of itself for a starting spot, because it's possible that these guys have been playing in low pressure scrims and doing just tryouts this whole time, and then the lights in the stadium are on and they hit record on Overwatch League preseason 1, and some people are going to rise to the occasion and some are going to crumble. So we might even see big changes after the preseason.
Yeah, and so this exercise is essentially to give you guys the names that you really need to be watching and taking a look at here, for what we think, are the most flexible spots here, what teams could do. Not to say if we think one person will get the spot over the other, that we're right, anything like that. We're not even making predictions here. We're just kind of giving our thoughts and our opinions with the information we have, what we would do. Obviously, we would watch scrims and make a judgment based off that if we could.
I think just based on where the players come from for this one, 2 things are going to play a big factor in who gets the start. I think if Note gets the start, it means one of 2 things: nepotism from Toronto esports, or that Kalios just does not flow with the team, which is possible because we've talked about the either language or culture barriers. We talk about people moving into the U.S. who haven't lived in the U.S. before. But I think even just looking, without having seen a ton of Africa Freaks and are really not seeing a ton of Toronto esports, I think most people would say, okay, yeah, Africa Freaks is going to be a better team than Toronto esports, and assuming that Kalios is going to be a better player than Note, I would think that Kalios gets the spot. However, you know, I mean, maybe it's not nepotism. Maybe he just flows better with the team. We've talked about how that is a huge thing, especially from an off tank who could be very crucial in terms of timing and executing appropriately. So,
well, another factor here might be if we look at the next positional battle for the support position, we have Avast versus Kellex kind of facing off here. We don't know who's going to win, but one thing I do know is that it's going to be, in all likelihood, I don't know for sure. I know, Kellex is Danish, but, sounds like there's going to be an English-speaking shot caller on the team, and maybe Kalios's English isn't up to speed. I don't know him well enough to know how he'll react to that and adapt to that, and those are all factors that come into play here. So those are the two that stand out to me. Whether or not Note is able to break in and get some playing time here, maybe he just works better with the other Western guys. We'll have to wait and see here. But clearly there's something different going on in Boston as far as talent evaluation is concerned, because I think most people agree that if Boston hadn't signed a good chunk of their roster, those guys would not be in Overwatch League right now. So there's a different method to their mayhem here. Sorry, Florida, I'm using your name, but method to their madness here, that says that we can't just lock it up and say Kalios is going to get that position. And we can't lock it up and say Avast is going to get that position, although I will say that is where I would go with it. Any opinion on the support decision there?
Not a ton. I think I agree with you mostly. Again, I think, say what you will about Boston, and many people have. As you may remember, they were universally not chosen by everyone, but averaged out to be the 12th out of 12 teams in the community power rankings that we did. They have the biggest question mark on their head, I think, more so than any other team in terms of what in the world is going on. And we've talked about it before. When you're at the bottom, you only have one way to go if you're going to be moving. I mean, you could stay at the bottom, but you've got only one way to go, and that's up. And, people have their opinions about Huck. People have their opinions about blah, 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 whatever about the team. I'm waiting. I'm withholding making judgments. I have to assume that they know something I don't, or I'm not seeing something. So I don't know. They're gonna be they're gonna be a team that I would keep an eye on, at least at the beginning.
For sure, they're one of 12 teams I'll keep an eye on. You got it, Blevins. Florida Mayhem is the next one. Again, they have the 6-man roster, so there's no roster discussion.
They're all starting.
There, yeah, we figured that one out. Houston Outlaws come up next here because we're just taking them in alphabetical order as they appear on the Overwatch League website. I promise it's not favoritism. Otherwise, I promise Boston wouldn't have been first. Houston Outlaws. So looking at things here, there's a couple, and the two I want to really focus in on here is the main one to me is flex support. I think this is the one that could potentially impact the success of the team the most. It's also one where I love both of these players. I don't know that I have a preference, right? Like I want them both to win. Can we just play 7 people and two flex supports, please? Because Raucus versus Bonnie is going to be one heck of a competition. When I look and see, I don't know that I've seen like the full depth of the hero pool for all of them, right? Obviously, they have roles within their team, as just like, I know I have roles within my team, and it doesn't always get me to use all the heroes that I would say are my best. It's what the team needs and what I can do. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how this all fleshes out. But when we look, Raucus is the one to me that, he definitely has the Sombra on lockdown. And I'm trying to remember.
You're cutting in and out a little bit.
Oh, I'm cutting in and out. Okay. They both have Sombra. Like they both have the same hero pool locked up for the most part, as far as I can tell. And this one seems to me like there's almost certainly going to be a starter, and then there's going to be a backup and a replacement. And I don't know that there's going to be a ton of subbing going back and forth on this one. But I know that I don't know that they can make a wrong choice here, right? Like I think Raucus has been around a little longer. We have more tape. So in my gut, I'm more comfortable with Raucus. Like if I had to make a decision with no scrim watching abilities, I might lean Raucus. But Bonnie's comes from with the team. He's been with the core of the roster for longer. So there's a lot at play here. Any personal preference on your end? Who you think should be the nod?
The gut decision is just to snap off Raucus. But like you said, the chemistry with the team is definitely going to. It's not going to be worth nothing. It shouldn't be, but I think that starts to level off, and I think Raucous just overall is probably has the edge there. And I think this is a decent time to mention the video, the Noah Winston video, and kind of his philosophy in building the team, and it makes some sense if all the teams used this philosophy, which was the long and short of it is, we didn't pick two players that have similar hero pools because we want them to compete against each other and cut each other's throats to try to get the starting spot. We picked two players who have similar hero pools and roles because we want them to learn from each other and get better from each other. So if one DPS is much better at McCree and Soldier, and another's better at two other hit scan DPS, they're going to learn from each other, fill in each other's gaps, and both be better because of it. Of course, Death and I both unanimously agreed that that's really just a way to sugarcoat them saying, yeah,
competing with each other.
Yeah, you're going to be competing with each other, for the spot. Because at the end of the day, whether you're competing or not, the spot is still contested, the starting spot, that is. So, I mean, I would be leery of having too much overlap because as someone who's running a team that wants to win, and I've had this happen as a coach in basketball, like, your goal is to win the game, and you don't want to keep players on the bench if they think that they can if they think they can help, right? Like, and if someone is playing the same heroes as you and you think that you're playing better than them, there's going to be some amount of like, put me in, coach, man. Like I could be doing a better McCree. I mean, there might not be that level of like animosity in it, but like that's the thought. It's like, he's out there playing McCree. I'm a McCree player. What am I doing on this team? I'm either better than this person, or like I could go on a different team and be their McCree. I could be better. So I don't know. I think that's an interesting philosophy to take, and I don't know if I would have. So I think
that's that's just on the organizations to like have communications with the players and know what they're bringing in, right? Like I think they feel confident that in Raucous and in Bonnie, they have guys that will feed off of each other, that will use it as a competition against one another, that will make each other better. They're teammates at the end of the day, right? I think we have to just, until we see otherwise, we just have to assume that these players are going to be able to wrap their head around the fact that like, I'm not starting right now. Like I need to improve this. And the coaches are going to be open books. Hey, this is why. Like they don't just not tell you why and just go, oh, this is what's happening. Like they explain it to you. They say, this is what we would need you to do better if you want to be able to challenge for the spot. What I think will be interesting is maybe the process, right? Like how, once it gets decided, how could it be possible? What would need to happen to see them switch? But nonetheless, Raucous versus Bonnie is one to definitely keep your eye on in the preseason and at the beginning of the season, because I think early decisions might be second guessed. Like if they're not second guessed within the first month of the season, then they're probably going to stick through for a little while. But we could see some flipping, and we could even see some shared work there. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't necessarily expect it, right? Because I think a lot of teams, and it looks like Houston is kind of one of them, that values well, here's our 6 people. You still have no idea what we're going to be doing once we get in the field and pick our heroes. But these are the 6 you'll be playing against, and I do think they value that a little bit. On Houston, we do have another battle I wanna point out here.
This is a big one.
This is a very big one. This is the projectile DPS. This role is, to me, very, very up in the air, right? So this is, the Bud Spot from old Corn Dogs, right? Yep. He's not on the team, so we know for a fact somebody's going to have to replace him. They went out and they picked up Linkser and Jake. And I think it's telling here that these guys don't really necessarily overlap a ton in their hero pool, right? Like we know they can both play Genji. But I don't remember seeing Linkser playing a ton of Junkrat at any point, right? Like I see him more on like, flexing to the Widowmaker and playing some other roles maybe a little bit even a little bit outside of the projectile role, but DPS always flexes to a certain degree back and forth. And then I think really, Jake might be meta dependent, right? Like you might bring him in when you have a map where we can play Genji or we can play Junkrat and we don't know what we want to do. Okay, well then let's play Jake. But if it's a map that, well, it's Genji, but maybe we, depending on what they do, we want to switch to Widow, then you go Linkser. So this one, I would almost lean towards shared time. But if I'm picking one to dominate it, I think it's got to be Linkser.
Yeah,
I think he is
100%.
As much as Jake opened my eyes to, it's been a while since we've seen LG Evil in action, so it's been a minute. But man, I mean, just Linkser. He leveled up Gigante to me. Like, not to discredit any of the other guys, but I think adding him above and beyond any other changes or additions they made freed them up tremendously. And I think what he was able to do, just suppressing Pharahs out of the sky without leaving Genji, was just too impressive to ignore. And while Jake has those big PogChamp moments, those big highlight reel plays on Genji, I don't know that he's as consistent map in and map out on the Genji. And also, Linkser, I don't know who runs the Pharah here in that composition. So I don't know. There's going to be some amount of sharing for this position.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't know. I would pick Linkser personally, but he's also like my second favorite player. So.
I agree with everything you said. I also think that Linkser is able, A, has more LAN experience, and B, is able to keep a cooler head if he needs to be a captain personality than Jake does, for sure. I also think this one almost, I mean, I haven't seen Mendo's hero pool in quite some time, but I think this almost, like, Mendo almost bleeds into this discussion a little bit too. I mean, he's not known as
in
much
his intro video. He did declare himself to be a hit scan specialist, so that's kind of why I left him off this list.
Right.
But we've seen him play a mean Hanzo, and you know what I mean. Like we've seen. All these guys have just a lot of flexibility to them, so their DPS position will be a lot of fun to watch going forward. But especially, I mean, you've got Clockwork in there too, and there's been talks and comments made by Flame that curdle my blood a little bit, but that might suggest that Clockwork would get the start on this team. We've talked about if experience is important, carrying over from the Corn Dog roster and from the previous roster. If they value that in momentum, Clockwork's not somebody we're going to see necessarily zero of. But I personally just think when you have Linkser, Jake, and Mendo to choose from, and instead, I do think Clockwork will, at least by the end of the season, become essentially buried on the roster a little bit. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. They could very well, and hopefully do a lot of swapping within the DPS, and throwing Mendo and Clockwork into that, I think, would be even more dangerous for their opponents.
Yeah, I think it's possible. I see Linkser as just very consistent, always very consistently good, but also has the like spurts of like, okay, I'm the best player in the game right now. Whereas Mendo and Jake almost have more of the PogChampy moments, but they dip down lower. So I think I almost don't want to see Linkser come out. And I'd rather see the rotation between Jake, Mendo, and Clockwork, depending on the temperament and the consistency of those three. I just really like, if I have Linkser on my roster, I don't want him on the bench at any time.
I just completely agree with you. I'm hoping he wins that battle, but I don't know. I think it's going to be a lot. I think we're going to see a lot of just. Especially with this team and this roster, we're going to see a lot of rest days built into their schedule just because they have the luxury, right? Like they can afford to sit somebody this day. Like he's not feeling well. He's got a bit of a sore throat. Let's let him sleep in like crazy today and just take the day. It'll be super easy. And, we can see that, like, Houston, to me, especially in their DPS core and that flex support, has the flexibility to get away with that, and where other teams necessarily don't. And they aren't going to experience a big drop off, I don't think, either way, no matter who wins this particular battle.
Yeah, they're going to have a solid 6 no matter who they roll out with. It's just going to be like the difference between making the playoffs or winning your playoff game is going to be, can you optimize and have the best 6 for the opportunity? So we'll see.
Speaking of optimizing and coming up with the best 6 here, Blevins, talk to us quickly about the London Spitfires and just pick 1 or 2 positional battles
Yeah, why don't
if you could. Just
why,
one. Just boil it down
we'll
to
do
one
one
positional
positional battle. Is which team are we going to roll out with? Are we going to roll out with GC Busan, or are we going to roll out with Cloud9 Kongdu? I mean, how can you not pick Busan? They won Apex.
Easy, you pick the other phenomenal roster that they picked up as well. These are two of the top teams coming out of Apex, right? Like you had the up and comer, and then you had the established top tier 1 to 2, 1A, 1B team here. A lot of people, Lunatic High had the popularity, but a lot of people thought Kongdu Panthera was the better team at the time of these signings here. So it'll be really interesting to see how they handle this. I'm not sold the best thing to do wouldn't be to take both decks, shuffle them together, and figure it out.
Deal them out,
and we talked a little bit on Discord earlier today when I was making the show notes about how we'd handle this. Like, I think I would have half my practice time be, okay, GC Busan is facing Kongdu, like the 2-hour scrim block, go, right? And then the second scrim block is shuffle the deck together and just piece it out and figure out a new combination you haven't run in a while or ever, and roll them against each other. And I think you'll start to see player combinations, right? Just little combos and things come out between players from the opposite rosters that maybe you don't even roll them out on the regular basis, right? But you've just got this one map and it's super crucial and we've got to win it. And so they can hide these individual strategies that they were able to work on and single scrims and make notes of and watch the tape on and specialize on their own time, right? Like they can go into these pug scrims and work on these combos that people will just think are memes and people goofing around. But then all of a sudden, oh no, we're really using this.
Oh, the Genji Moira was insane.
Right. And so we could not boil this one down to a single positional battle or two. There was no breaking this up at all. There's another one that's very similar to this. There's just no way to break it up. You've got to include and talk about the whole thing. And that's why London is at the top of my power rankings, because that terrifies me that I can't even begin to fathom to guess what the best combination of these players will be. But it also makes them the most likely to just mismanage it into the ground and never get the right combo out there to begin with and just fall into mediocrity. So we'll have to wait and see.
I think it could be really toxic for their team as a whole if they keep that like division up. Like, oh, we're Busan, we're fighting for starters, or we're Cloud9 Kongdu and we're fighting for starters. I think that's a bad way. That is a very good way to build up resentment and not build the whole team environment. One of the other things that Noah Winston talked about in his videos about how we're not just a good team because of the individual talent that we have right now. We're a good team because we're building as a team with all of the players we're building. And I think it would just be extremely silly if they had like A squad, B squad, and it was just the two preset teams, and whichever team was playing better that week in scrims got the start. I think that would be really bad. I think you have it spot on where shuffle up the deck every once in a while, see if you can get some good stuff on it, because that's got to be the best best way to get the most out of your 12-man roster, right?
I would think so, at least in the long term. Now, that's not necessarily going to be your best strategy for success in the first week, but it all depends. Like, that's why I think there's got to be some mixture to it here. Like, you want to be able to keep and maintain that momentum and that synergy that they have, but you need to expand on it, and you need to build on it, and you need to I don't know, just mush them together and come out with a product that's better than the sum of its parts. I think is the best way to put it. So we'll have to wait and see exactly how things go here. But Blevins, why don't you talk to us quickly and lay out the two positions? And we actually got Bare Hands of the New York Excelsior to comment, but these guys are your favorite team, so why don't you lay out the two positional battles that I marked down here? They're not necessarily as up for grabs as maybe some of the other ones, but something that piqued my interest, something I'm looking into.
Yeah, so we've got the main tank. We've got Janus versus Mono, and I mean, this is another one where like we weren't following Luxury Watch as much as back in the day. And also they weren't playing even in Apex for quite some time. But Yeah, I mean, I don't know
So
what was the
when I
biggest thing
looked
for you?
at these, there was a lot to them in the sake of like there was a lot of hero pools that didn't necessarily like completely overlap, right?
Hmm.
So this is a situation where I fully expected going into this and looking at this to there not be an answer to this, right? Like I didn't expect it to be, you know, I expect Mono to be the kind of the normal main tank here, but at the same time we do have Janus who is billed as their other tank, but when you look at some of the heroes that he plays on the regular, like he's got some ability to go elsewhere, and when you look at a guy like um, Pine, he's listed as support and DPS. Like, there's not a clean way to kind of include him in this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like say Biolby, his hero pool definitely skews more towards like the tracers and things like that, and where Pine
Yeah.
would be more likely to pick up McCree than I think say Biolby would be in a tournament match. So with it being as kind of muddied as it was in the best possible way, like I don't want it to sound like I'm saying it in a bad thing.
Which like world class player are we going to put in at this
Right,
spot?
right. I've talked in depth about how I value that exact, like the fact that I look at this roster and I go, I don't even know what the position battles would be necessarily.
Yeah.
Like I think is an asset and a positive to them. And when we talked to Bare Hands, I sent him a message. He gave me a quick response. He said he thinks it's a mistake to think of your roster in terms of here's my starting spot and here's my bench players. He said if you construct your roster well, you probably have members of your team that are more suited to specific situations, and it would make sense to deploy the best lineup for the situation you're in rather than having a starter and a bench guy, or however you want to try to define it. So, he also threw in another line, and it's the one area where I'm not 100% sure I fully agree with him, but I think if you sign people to your team that you view as bench players, then you probably should have signed better players. And that's a phenomenal insight into how he's looking at it, right? Like there's not going to be winners of these positional battles. These guys have experience with each other for the most part. There's a couple exceptions and a couple shakeups, but they're going to intermingle these rosters and these players together into different combinations every single week. It's one of the reasons I think they're truly terrifying to look at even before they add Flower into the mix. Yeah. I don't think we need to interject too much of our personal opinions into how this is going to work. I think if nothing else, just take it at face value that Bare Hands isn't viewing them like they're starting spots and there's backups. He's viewing it as a fluid situation, and he's going to change things up, and his coaching staff is going to change things up as they see fit based off the opponent in front of them, the map they're on, the meta that they're in at the moment. Like they're going to be a reactive team. They're not going to be somebody that just we play our game. Like, no, their game is just be phenomenal at Overwatch and to be really adaptive. And that's always been a quality that even the devs wanted. They want this to be a game where you're constantly changing things up and switching heroes. And Excelsior seems to be following the spirit of that. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see them kind of get things played out here.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the things that it's hard to tell as someone who hasn't followed the Korean scene as much and hasn't done as much research, but just in talking with Bare Hands, he's saying like people don't even know like Libero's hero pool and say Biolby's hero pool is just as deep as Flowers, and like
You're
Flower
right.
was like known.
We don't know.
Yeah, we don't know, and I think like I wouldn't even necessarily call it a reactive roster as much as like they can have a plan for specific maps and situations and have the flexibility to, okay, well, Libero plays on this map and say Biolby plays on this map and Pine plays on this map, like that sort of mix potentially. I don't know.
Well, I'll take back the word reactive because Bare Hands likes to give me flack in our Discord. So
yeah,
I'll protect myself from that a little bit and just say that they're going to be a proactive and adaptable team. Like they're going to be able to do both.
Yeah, and I think if anything, at least for a lot of the teams, they're going to be reacting to the dominance of Excelsior for sure.
Pronounced sure. But anyways, moving on.
Well, I'm not worried about it. But
so let's take a look here. The next team we're going to talk about is the Philadelphia Fusion. And this is one where there's two that I want to talk about, and then there's a third that will become a problem later on, right? And then we'll talk about that one first. Carpe seems to be set up to play that kind of tracer hit scanny role straight away out of the get-go. But then Snillo from 1-2-3, a team we definitely had our eyes on through the Contenders experiment and last two seasons. He's going to be turning 18 on March 2nd. Assuming my information is correct. So they're going to kind of unlock a little bit and have an extra positional battle to take a look at there. So keep an eye on what's going to happen with Carpe and Snillo. But very specifically here, I think at the beginning, the two fights that stand out to me are Fraggy versus Sato. And this is to me a fight because I have to lean Fraggy here. Like we just saw him win Contenders. Like he's one of the best Reinhardts that I've ever seen play. He's very high up on that list. And then we've got Sato, who's kind of an unknown Korean talent. And when you look at his Wikipedia or his Over.gg page, it's just like his name's Sato. That's the only information that we can currently get on him.
The info I have on is he's from Apparitions Got Gaming. I don't even know if I've ever heard those words before in my life.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what happened either, but I read somewhere, and it's not super, it's like a Reddit post or something like that. Like he might have been removed from the Overwatch scene in South Korea prior to this. But what I do know without any doubt whatsoever is that Knox said on stream that he was trialed for this position for Philadelphia, and they preferred Sato. So they decided to pick Sato over Knox, and that to me, Knox is a very high-quality main tank. He's definitely, somebody I would have thought would have made it onto a roster here. Maybe he didn't. I'm blanking. I don't think so, though. I think he was on the list from the other day when we were doing our teams. So this to me says that there's a high likelihood that he's one of these unknown players that could really come out and surprise. Like I can't say definitively that Fraggy's going to win this job because I don't know enough about Sato. All I know is the people he beat out for this roster spot were pretty darn good. So there's a really good chance we don't know enough about Sato and need to learn a lot more in order to to make that decision. So keep an eye on that in the preseason. And the other one here, this is one that we do have a bit of a track record for these guys on, and I'm still basically no closer to making a decision on that. But in the support position, we have Joe Meister and Neptuno. And the reason I say this is very likely to be the shot caller for the team. So I think it's going to be really telling, this is kind of like entire roster defining, like how are we going to operate going forward when you're picking your shot caller here. So the fact that there's two of them, I don't know if that's scary or exciting for Fusion fans, but it's definitely both for me as a bit of a casual Fusion fan. So I don't know. I would lean Joe Meister, but I've always just kind of been a bit of a Joe Meister fan. I do really like him as a player. Can't really go wrong either way. I honestly, they're both very strong participants. Do you have any preference here?
I want to pick Neptuno just because you picked Joe Meister, but it's another one of those ones where you're gonna have a high quality player in the position one way or the other, and I think we might start. It's entirely possible that we see they run them on these four maps, or maybe not these four maps because they know what maps they're going to be playing throughout the stage. So I doubt that it's going to be that. It's this is their defense. This is their defensive team, and this is their offensive team. Maybe it's something like that. I never even thought about it until literally right now. We're like, okay, they roll out their attack. They're the attack Winston, and this is the the defense Winston, something like that. I don't know. It's possible to see that.
We don't have a clear definition of how substitutes will be allowed, but I think the general thought is that it's going to be between maps, not between sides, where you'll be able to make these subs. Which I think would make the most sense personally. But to me, it boils down to track record here, right? Do I want the guy that's been with FaZe Clan, who I've seen level up and play really well in the most recent Contenders, or do I want the guy that was a stand-in on the Cloud9 EU team and was on Movistar Riders? And granted, don't get me wrong, nothing against Movistar Riders, they jumped up quickly and became a very serious team in short order, and it could have been in large part because of Neptuno's leadership. I don't know, but for the time being, I just think Joe Meister's a little safer of a bet, and so that's the direction I would lean.
Yeah, the one thing that I didn't even think about until right now is these players that maybe on paper were not as skilled as these other players may have just leveled up proportionally way more than these quote unquote better players, because if you are a lower tier player playing up, you're going to get better, whereas the other player, the player that's higher up, might not go up as much. So who knows? I mean, they might tier off at each other and maybe even push past in some cases, depending on how their scrims and their practices and whatnot are going. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. But do you want to move on to the Pacific Suck division?
I mean, I suppose we can if we really want to. The only other thing I do want to say though, is about Philly is Dayfly versus Boombox might be more. There might be more to it than it looks on the surface to me. I don't know a ton about Dayfly. I just know that if Zenyatta's in the meta, I really want Boombox to be playing it. And so I for the time being, until we see a different meta actually come out and solidify, I did lean Boombox's direction there. If for nothing else, because I didn't want I carry him to yell at me for not picking the Brit. But, we can move along here, as we said, to the Pacific Division, and Dallas Fuel's the top of the alphabetical list, so we get to skip them right away. We already talked about that. LA Gladiators, though, are the next team here, Blevins, and they are another one of those teams that didn't really seek out a ton of that depth here. In fact, of the 6 people that were required, they only went ahead and signed 1 extra player. So that's how many open spots there are. When we look at it, we only really have this decision at DPS. And as I viewed it, and again, we've talked about how DPS can be very flexible. There could be hiding heroes in their hero pool just because it didn't fit right in their last team. But I basically broke this down to, do you want Surefour or do you want Asher? And I know we both love Surefour, and we get really hyped up when we get to see him play. So kind of the direction you're going, or do you want a piece of the Conbox player Asher?
I mean, it seems like the easy answer would be Surefour, right? I don't know. It's the same. It's really the same question as when we talked about Boston, although I think most would like definitively say that Kalios is better than Note on Boston. But it's like, can the one-off Korean player who maybe on paper has a higher skill cap than the NA Canadian player, can they do as good as they would in a more stable environment for them? I don't know. Without that question being answered, and with me thinking that Surefour's pretty darn good, even if Asher might be slightly better, I don't know. I would go with Surefour with the not even having to worry about it.
Yeah, to me, Surefour is a player that you completely construct a roster around, right? Like, I would go out and find people that support him. And with that said, when you do that, you might need a really similar player that can kind of serve as his backup. And Asher, we're very upfront about our skipping over and skimping on the Korean content a little bit. But Conbox wasn't one of those teams, right, that was like always up there. Like, they always do well, but I don't like.
It was in the mix, but never at the top. Yeah,
like they're falling into the top 8, but they're I don't know,
melty esports of
their last 2 placements in the Apex tournaments in season 3 and 4 were either 7th or 8th place. So I don't know, when I look at Asher, when I see his tape, and I actually watched a little of his tape earlier today, he's a very solid DPS player. He can hang with the best of them. But I think on a good day for Surefour, he can crush any of the best players in the world if they're not at the absolute top of their game. And I don't know, I haven't seen that from Asher. So unless he was able to show me that in scrims, I would think that Surefour's spot in the roster is probably pretty solidified. What you might see is instead maybe, Hydration is very locked into his Genji and his Pharah gameplay. And there's times teams want to play double hit scan and things like that. Like, there might be opponents where we see more Surefour and Asher together than fighting for the same spot. And we might see hydration pushed out in favor of another guy that can come in and play hit scan. So I would definitely lean Surefour in that spot. But obviously this is one of those Junkenstein's roster teams, and it just feels to me like they built it around Surefour when they made it. So I think he's going to win that spot.
Yeah, and to complete the meme, Surefour for sure.
For sure. All right, so the next team here, we're going to stay in Los Angeles and talk about the LA Valiant, and we did have that very nicely timed. I assume it was pretty recently. I didn't hear about it until after I was done writing their roster, their roster breakdowns here. But basically, they signed 12 players. Like, they have full competitions and full pairings here of not teammates who will elevate. No, they have starters and they have bench players. And
regardless of whether that's how they put it, there are starters and there are not starters.
Right, and to me, I don't like. It sounds like that's a competition that might bring out. I can't remember the last time I saw a quarterback in the NFL completely collapse because there was somebody behind him who was pretty good, right? Like, they all just very fluidly, like, the coach makes his decision, and I guess I should have done better if I didn't want to lose the job. Like, you saw my reaction to Tyrod Taylor being benched last week, and Tyrod Taylor's like, well, it's disappointing, but at the end of the day, it's the coach's decision, and now my job is to go out there and help the guy who's taking my job prepare to the best of his abilities. And when that idiot was out there throwing interception after interception after interception, 5 of them in like 2 seconds flat. Who was the first person that came up to him? Sorry, I couldn't not go off on that tangent. Who was the first person that came up to him? Was the guy whose job he took. I said, all right, man, calm down, rookie. Like, you've got to just relax a little bit and get back out there. I don't see any reason. I mean, they're younger, but I don't see any reason why esports players can't be in a very similar position. I don't think the egos are so big. Like, they understand there was only 12 teams, right? Like, I might be very good. I might be top tier, but it's also possible that there's just more than 12 people that are top tier at my position right now.
Right. And I mean, the other thing when we talked with Ryan Morrison is, like, a lot of these players have very different personalities and wants in the league. It's possible that they just want to be on a team. They want to get better. Maybe they'll be with this organization forever and run with it. And maybe they're fine being, getting 20% play time versus someone else at a similar role,
or benching and learning and having an experience to go into the expansion team that they then want to move to. Like, that could be very well in some of these players' plans
for sure.
And they're just fine with it. So, but to kind of break it down here and look at the individual players, we do have at main tank, we have Fate versus Numlocked. At flex tank, we've got Envy versus Space. At flex support, I think, obviously, I love flex supports because I think Unco versus Kareem is super, super interesting. We've got Grim Reality and Soon, and then we've got Agilities and Silk Thread. And honestly, I kind of viewed Silk Thread as more like having a similar hero pool to Agilities, or not Agilities, but Grim Reality and Soon. They all seem to me to just be like really good Tracer players, right? So, but in the video specifically, Noah Winston kind of paired off Agilities and Silk Thread as partners. And so I do expect maybe more of a transition there. And Silk Thread's somebody that I haven't seen a ton of tape on, but he just always seems to be playing Tracer whenever I do get to see him. So I think he's like subbed in for a bunch of teams, but more than he's been like on, steadily on a spot and on a home. But any of these, in particular that you want to talk about here, Blevins?
Honestly,
leave my supports alone.
No, I think, it's tough because it's going to be, do you want the original Immortals roster intact as much as possible, or do you want something new? It seems like, based on the Noah Winston video, they want something that's greater than what they've already accomplished, which makes sense considering how they did in Contenders Season 1. But I think, their philosophy is more like, we're going to grow these players together. They're going to be working together and getting better from each other. And in a game time decision is going to be made to see who starts, or a map dependent decision is going to be made to see who starts. And maybe, like, once they figure out, like, okay, well, I'm always going to play Volskaya. Okay, great. Maybe then it gets settled out like that, and players kind of fall into their roles. Even though they're the same role, they're just better on one map or another. I don't know, but I think that's kind of how they're orienting the team.
Yeah, and I think we might see kind of that really kind of shake up. And this might be another one of those rosters where I think we might see eventual shakeups more so than, because this is a roster that, while you'd think they want to keep that momentum going forward and the synergy that they built up, it wasn't too long ago that they cut half their roster and brought in Korean talent into their NA roster. Yeah. So, you know, they're clearly open to when it's needed, and I think they can recognize when it's needed, and they did seem to improve based off of those changes. So now they just get a little bit more ability to bring in even more people and potentially shake things up better. But specifically Unco versus Kariv, I cannot wait to see shake out. Kariv is one of those you know, Korean additions that came in, and you know, you don't have to watch very much to know that he's a really, really high skilled player. But Unco comes, you know, from a proven background, and he's gotten a ton of publicity, and rightfully so, because he's been you know, a really rock steady you know, support player. And their hero pools just overlap. Like, this is one where I don't know that I would pick any one of these. Like, I don't know, I'll go pick them all now since I said that. But I'll take Fate, and then I'll take give me Space, and then Kariv. Then I'll take Grim Reality and Agilities. I think Silk Thread's probably going to need a little time. I don't know. Unless he's hiding some insane Genji abilities. Agility is lights out on a couple heroes. Yeah. So I think he might you know, get subbed out depending on the map and situation a little bit more than the rest. But I don't know. It's a tough spot. There's one where I would love to just be a fly on the wall in their scrims. I don't think their social media guy is going to let me have that conversation with anybody anymore. But we'll leave that grudge match for another day.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't know. This one's tough. This is one of the most difficult teams to figure out, and I think you see that in the power rankings because they just fall like smack dab right in the middle.
Yeah. They're
just like, everybody's just like all over across the board. Nobody knows what to do, and then they just averaged out at 7.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a tough one, but I think I could make arguments for literally all of them, for all 12 of them to be starters. So this is a good group here for the Valiant.
Yeah, I mean, they're not in a bad spot. And again, this is it wasn't really a Junkenstein's roster, but it was a take the body of Immortals and add a bunch of other stuff that can be fused into something bigger.
Right. It was the most Junkenstein of all the teams that did keep a core around, I think, for the most part.
For sure.
Close in that regards with Houston. Like, Houston had a similar approach. But moving on here, we do have a team that is really awkward to talk about right now because of how drastically things will change for the San Francisco Shock when Super and Sinatra become unlocked and are able to be played. But for now, we have this kind of interesting situation where we're going to need DPS players, we're going to need a hit scan, and we're going to need a projectile, and then we're also going to need an off tank. And instead, we just like, here's 4 hit scan players, and we're just going to make it work. Right? Like, we have IDDQD, we have Baby Bay, we have Dante, and we have Nevix. Nevix and Baby Bay have proven to be very, very flexible. Dante, I'm blanking a little bit on his hero pool off the top of my head, but I know obviously all these guys are like, you know, fairly known for their tracers. We've seen Dante play basically like all the backliners, right? Like, he's credited for Sombra, he's credited for Genji. So he's got that flexibility. He can move over and play the Genji as needed, but it's going to be really interesting to see how this gets played out, because I think Baby Bay on Diva might be just fine, but like, I don't know who would play Zarya if they wanted it. It's going to be a very awkward. I would
say Sinatra, but not old enough yet.
Yeah, can't. So this is one where it's going to unlock, but I don't know that it's going to become any clearer when it does unlock, right? Like, the off tank will probably just be super 100% of the time. But unless it's Zarya, right? Because then Sinatra might be better, and they do have other tracers that can do it. But I don't think any other tracers are as good as Sinatra when Sinatra's playing well. No. So I don't know.
Well, I want it. I mean, I want Super to play Reinhardt, man. Like, I want to see that hammer swinging.
Right.
Like, I don't know. But I'm not going to accept any any answer that doesn't involve IDDQD playing hit scan, because it literally, like, he's one of those aimbot machines. Like, it would be silly. It seems silly to not have him. He like, I don't know. I can't see him not doing it. Play IDDQD. Stupid. Do it.
I 100% agree with you, but if you want to run traditional dive, right, which would mean, you know, Diva and Winston. So if theoretically we've got to have Baby Bay there. And then like you probably like, I don't know that he's a better tracer than Sinatra is.
No, I don't think he is.
But like, there's
maybe
no
he
doubt
is.
who the best McCree on this team is, and it's definitely IDDQD.
Yeah, 100%.
There could be some flexibility to it, but at the beginning, I think like that might be their only chance.
Their only loadout.
It's stealing some wins is to just, all right, well, cement IDDQD out there. He's got to go, and then let's like do anything in our power to never take him off of McCree, and just form around him and try to make it work. Like that might be the best game plan that they could come up with, but we'll have to wait and see here.
Like, are they able to run dive without their unlocked roster better than another Overwatch League team?
And
I don't know.
Even with their unlocked roster, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, and it's not even to discredit them. It's just they have so much talent. Once they fully unlock, they have so much talent that it's really, really difficult to piece it together in the correct way. You know, they've kind of got like the London Light problem after they unlock. It's like, there's a lot going on here.
Yeah.
It's going to take a really, really smart coach to manage it. Good luck, Brad. I can't wait to see you do it, but good luck.
Yeah.
Because I don't know how it's all gonna break down. It's crazy, and it's hit scan heavy to be sure, but you know, they added Nevix, who's obviously got some flexibility to him as well. He's even got some support players in his hero pool, but he's a solid Genji. I don't know who their Pharah would be if they wanted to run one. I don't know who would be, on a lot of heroes for these guys, but
I think IDQD can play. I mean, he was playing Junkrat before, so I'm pretty sure he can play Pharah too.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But then, how do you justify taking a guy like that? How do you justify taking him or Sinatra off of their best characters when they overlap? It's going to be tough to see.
Have them both run Tracer.
Yeah,
just go back to hero stacking.
Twinston, Tusio, and Trey, man.
How funny would it be if they were just like, so for Overwatch League, hero stacking is back.
That would be the best.
That would be such
San
a great
Francisco
troll.
would just move a lot in my power rankings, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll wait and see exactly how all this plays out. San Francisco, for this exact question right here, is going to be incredibly fun to watch. Even before they unlock, it will be very fun to see how they figure things out. Though we do generally agree that they're likely to struggle.
I mean, if they can string together a decent first half before they unlock, they're going to be a team that has a good shot to move up.
How are we doing here, by the way? Longest episode ever?
Very close.
Getting close.
We're almost at an hour and a half right now.
All right. Well, we can move pretty quick through the last two here.
Yeah.
The Seoul Dynasty. Okay, we don't watch a ton of Korea, but we did. Yeah. We do talk to people that watch a ton of it. A. Smith chimed in a little bit here. And the Seoul Dynasty have two just big questions here, right? Like they need to replace Eska, and they need to replace Who Are You? And we think they've done a really good job of finding talent that can do that. But to replace Eska, is it the questions as we broke them down after talking to A. Smith, is it going to be Munchkin or is it going to be Bunny? And for replacing Who Are You, it's going to be, is it Weekheed? Is it going to be Guido, or is it going to be Fleta? I don't have a good feeling on this one. I know I hear a ton of really, really good things about Fleta, so I can't wait to see him. I can't wait to see him in action, but I'd be lying, and I don't want to do that if I pretended like, I'd seen a ton of tape on him and could really get a firm grasp on that situation. We did get to see them, a bunch of those guys, fill in for Lunatic High when they did that show match not too long ago with like Miraculous Youngsters and that. So go back and watch that if you want to see those guys just kind of working in, but how they'll compare with one another on a day-to-day if we were to swap them out a little bit, I don't know. That's really, though, to me, the main questions here for Seoul. And then the last one, when you look at the Shanghai Dragons, they're not the deepest roster in number. I want to say they're only like one or two over the six that they need. And there's really only one spot here where they really overlap in hero pool. There'll probably be a decent amount of switching between the DPS players. There's going to be the Doomfist comp that China loves to run, and then there's going to be the non-Doomfist comp where they try to fit into what the Koreans and the Westerners are doing. But Five King versus Altering was the main role here for the Lucio spot. And I think myself and A. Smith were kind of in agreement that Five King kind of has the nod here. That's the direction we're leaning, but I don't have a very, very strong opinion on that one.
Couldn't tell you a thing about it.
Good talk. So that's it, guys. Those are your positional battles, things that we're going to be looking at, next week, a week from today when things kick off for the Overwatch League preseason. We're also next week, I think it's fair to say, going to be talking about the individual matchups that we're going to be seeing, maybe discussing some of these matchups a little bit more.
Predictions,
making
all that
predictions.
good stuff.
It's like our warm up, right? It's the preview.
My mouth is watering.
It's our preseason as well as anybody. So if there's anything you want to see covered in a preview episode, then definitely let us know. We're very, very excited to get things into momentum, and then we'll have kind of a little bit of a dull time and a lull after the preseason before the actual main season kicks off.
Yeah. If there's anything that you want to see in this last episode before the preseason starts, head over to discord.me/HighNoonPodcast and throw a question or suggestion in the show suggestions thing. We do always look at those and take them into very high consideration.
Yeah, you've heard a lot of content that came directly from those channels.
Yep.
And real quick, before I let Blevins just take over and sign off for us, we do have 2 iTunes reviews to read today. Both of them are 5-star reviews, guys.
Nice.
If you want to support the show, we've talked about Patreon. You can sub to us on Twitch, all those good things that'll help us monetarily to have giveaways and cool stuff. But at the end of the day, we need to reach new fans in order to grow and get better as a show. And this is the number one way to go about helping us to reach a larger audience. So please do stop by the iTunes page and leave us a review. We will read it on the air at the end of the episode after you do. First one, 5-star review from Croz, my favorite Overwatch competitive podcast. High Noon was the first competitive Overwatch podcast and one of the few that has stayed in my playlist since I started listening. The Blevins and Deathblow are the reasons why I became so invested in the Overwatch League with their knowledge of the pro players and fun quips. I am very much looking forward to the first season and a professional breakdown of each game. Keep up the great work, boys. Thank you so much, Croz. Really appreciate it. Hope we can do you proud as the league gets started here. The next one is from A.W. Lafferty, an Overwatch ESPN level talk show. Really, really appreciate that, even though I'm not a big ESPN fan. This is a great podcast. The Blevins and Deathblow are great hosts with insightful content and intelligent discussion. They hype me every week for Overwatch as a game and the coming league. Really, really appreciate that, guys. It means a lot to us that we can bring you in on something we're becoming so passionate about and that we're so interested in. Really glad that comes through in the show and that you guys can hear that, and it's helping you guys get excited and bringing you guys into the competitive scene. That means a lot more than all the other comments and inside jokes. We love that you guys get those, but this makes me feel like we're actually benefiting the community a little bit instead of just entertaining it, which both are very, very good. But if we can help it grow, I think that's our primary goal here. So we really appreciate those very thoughtful comments, guys.
Yeah, always. I mean, it's still to this day, 2 years later, and thousands of subscribers and everything. Yeah, every time. It's still weird for us to think that other people watch the show and like it and have gotten into Overwatch because of it. So a huge thanks for that. And guys, like Deathblow said, iTunes is the best way to support us in terms of helping the show grow. You guys have been great in all the stuff that you guys have been helping us out with and promoting us and retweeting and all that good stuff. It's been so great. But I think that's it, Death. Are we ready to close
Shut her
it out?
down, Blevins.
We're shutting her down. Okay. All right, everyone. That's going to be it. Thanks for all the live listeners. We had a nice little crew in here today without any help from any guests. We had, I think, like 15 at one point, which is awesome. So huge shout outs to the live Twitch viewers. We do record every Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, twitch.tv/HighNoonPodcast. Follow the channel because we do go live at different points in the week if we're doing supplemental streams. I know Death does some coaching streams or some other streams from time to time. I try to play from time to time. We also have interviews on the High Noon Hot Seat from time to time, which we are going to be having Grim Reality from the LA Valiant on later this week. So keep an eye out for that follow the channel.
Look for it Friday. It's been postponed once. Hopefully we're able to get it in. In the event we do get it in, we're just going to immediately roll it out to iTunes since it'll be the end of the week. We want you guys to be able to listen to it ASAP. So it'll be late this week, but it's definitely coming, as we want you to have something for the weekend.
Yes. So, but you can follow us over on Twitter at High Noon Podcast on Twitter. All the stuff is there. And make sure, guys, check out that pinned tweet. It's going to be your chance to get that Overwatch League jersey of your choice. I'll send you whichever one you want. As long as it's New York or Houston, okay, we won't play favorites. As long as it's not Dallas. As long as it's not Dallas, we'll send it to you. We can both agree on that.
You hear that machine from Discord? We're not giving you it.
Yeah, take that, A. Smith. And speaking of A. Smith, huge shout outs to A. Smith, who has just helped the show grow immensely with all the help that he provides us, all the guests that he's booked. Like, guys, if you ever see A. Smith in the channel, just give him a Blevins thumbs up or a clap or something in the channel, and all that stuff. But that is going to be it, guys. Again, huge shout outs and thanks to everyone in the Discord, discord.me/High Noon Podcast. Huge shout outs to all the patrons and everyone that listens everywhere. Huge shout outs to everyone. Huge shout outs to all the new people from the giveaway and all the new people in Discord. If this is your first episode listening and you're in the Discord, just give a thumbs up when you hear this. I don't know. I'll know what it means. I won't know what it means. We'll just be like, what's wrong with you people? But that's going to be it, guys. Again, thanks to everyone. If you forgot all of the links that I said and where to find everything, Death, do you know where we can find every link to everything?
Yeah, if you just go over to highnoonpodcast.com, there are links on the front page to literally all of our individual social media, the show's social media, and then there's a host page where you can find all our individual social media outlets. Please do go ahead and add us, reach out to us. We can't stress enough. We legitimately love the feedback and the interaction with you guys. So stop by and say hello anywhere you would prefer to.
Anywhere you want. Okay, guys, that's going to be it. Huge thanks to Matt Torino for sponsoring the SoundCloud. So all you SoundCloud listeners, remember, thank Matt Torino for that. Huge thanks to Adam Hook, who played the awesome music, which people have recently been like, man, this is some snazzy music. Adam Hoek over on YouTube. It's ADAMHOEK. I'm not, we haven't been in contact with him in a while. I don't know if he's still making Overwatch stuff, but definitely check out his YouTube channel. Check out that really cool guy who was actually our first guest, I believe.
If you begged him enough to continue and resume making Overwatch.
Yeah, if you tweeted at him to make like an Overwatch League specific for the podcast season 1 outro, he might do it. I don't know. Don't bug him, guys. But if you want to talk to him,
if you miss his Overwatch content, legitimately tell him. I would love to see him making it again. But stop by and say hello.
Yes, but he did the awesome outro music, which you are about to hear. But guys, that is going to be it for Deathblow. I'm the Blevins, and remember, it's high noon.
Got his boots and he put on his hat. He threw the coin away that same day. It's in his past and he's not looking back. He says, finding mine now, God's my way. He's not good, but he sure ain't bad. He'll make amends for the sins that he has. He says, I'll change the world one bullet at a time till I find mine.
Who am I kidding? I would never change that outro. It's perfection already.